What's up, everybody? This is episode 40 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Um, for everybody out there that's been supporting the wave, shout outs to you guys. If for those that haven't seen our episode, check it out on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. But without further ado, I have a very special guest for y'all. His name is Mr. Delgreco Wilson. He's one of South Jersey and Philly's best recruiting evaluators. You know what I'm saying? You might know Black Cajun Press. That's this guy right here. Del, thank you for coming on to share your story, man.
It's my pleasure, Dave. I'm always down for some Dave's Joint, man. I'm always down with that, man.
Indeed. So my first question is for you. When did basketball start for you?
I grew up in a small town adjacent to Southwest Philadelphia. It's called Darby Township.
Okay.
Darby Township, our high school, was in existence for, I think, 17 years.
That's short.
Very short. And 5 of those years, we played for the state championship.
Mm-hmm.
2 times we won it. And about 7 or 8 times we went to the Final Four. And it was a small school. We would have no more than 200 kids at a time. Graduating class of boys would be like 80, 90 boys. But we were really competitive in sports, and basketball specifically, football here and there, track and field pretty much on a regular basis. So as I was growing up, all I ever wanted to do, Dave, was wear that Darby Township basketball uniform, And fortunately, when I got over to the high school, I was able to make JV in the 9th grade and played 3 years of varsity. So that's when it all started at Darby Township High School.
So talk about growing up in Darby Township, and what's the basketball culture like in Pennsylvania?
With Darby Township, the beauty of it was that our high school coach was a man named Alonzo Lewis. And Alonzo Lewis was the second Black player in the history of LaSalle University, and maybe the first in Big Five history. Because, the Big Five started, I think, when he got there in like 1955. There had been a Black guy, Jackie, I forget his last name, but he had played at LaSalle in the late 40s, early 50s, one other guy. So he played with Tom Gola and them. They had some great teams. They played for the national championship against Bill Russell in San Francisco and those guys. I mean, so as I was growing up, we had Mr. Lewis to tell us about the Big Five and all the stories about playing at LaSalle and playing against Bill Russell, things of that nature. He played a long time in the old Eastern League. The NBA had a quota in those days. The max was about 2 Black guys on every team. So he never got a chance to play in the NBA. But his friends would come out during the summer and spend some time with us. And I'm talking about guys like, Len Greer, right, that played at Temple.
Mm-hmm.
But his father, not Len Greer the third, that's the kid currently playing now. Not Len Greer Sr., the original Len Greer. Mm-hmm. I watched him in the mid-'70s. I'm 10, 11 years old. These guys would play in a summer league out my way, the Darby Township Summer League. We would have guys like Joe Washington, Ricky Tucker, who played at Providence. We had guys like Kevin Broadnax and Neil Robinson. They played at Temple. All these guys would come out to Little Darby Township to play in the summer. So you just had all these aspirations, And we had some really good homegrown players as well. Alton McCullough ended up playing at Temple for 4 years, 1,000 points, like 800 rebounds. And my high school teammate, one of my best friends, was Jeffrey Arnold. And he's currently an assistant coach at Rider, but he played at St. Joseph's. And they won the A-10 tournament, and they lost to Cleveland State in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So I've been around it, all the way coming up. And I played a little bit in college until I discovered that I was perhaps a better student and a better writer than I was a basketball player. One of my professors really kind of made that pretty clear to me. He said, well, dude, you think you're going to the NBA? I said, no one had ever asked me that, Dave. And I said, you know what? No, I don't think so. So he said, get in the car. and he rolled me over to the University of Delaware. And based solely on his recommendation, I was offered a full fellowship on the spot. Now, I didn't know what a fellowship was at the time, you know. So the chairperson of the Department of Political Science at Delaware, his name was James Oliver. He pulled out a sheet of paper that had the terms of the fellowship on it and slid it across the desk. And all I saw was like, I don't know, it was like $14,000-$15,000 a year, you know, that they would pay me to go to graduate school to study political science. And so I asked him, I said, well, you know, what do I have to do? He said, you need to get good grades. And that was it. There were no other job responsibilities. You know, they just really wanted me. So at that point, I decided on the way back in the car with my professor, I told him to drop me off at the gym. And I knocked on my coach's door and I said, you know what, coach, I quit. You know, I have a fellowship. And he looked at me, he was like, what you know about a fellowship? You don't have a fellowship. I'm like, dude, I have a fellowship and I need to get ready for graduate school. I had 2 years of eligibility remaining. And I just said, and I played, you know, I started and played, you know, we were okay at Lincoln, you know, probably a 500 or a little over 500 team at the time. But I could really understand what doors would be open with the fellowship. And so schools that had never entered my mind, you know, as an athlete, a year later when I'm really starting to think about graduate school and I take the GRE, I was accepted to Michigan, Ohio State, Delaware, California Davis. There were some others. Really, the only schools that I didn't get into that I applied to was like Yale. I got in everywhere. They all offered me these fellowships. I even, right 2 weeks after I graduated from college, I was on a plane to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I spent the summer after my graduation from undergrad at Michigan in a program for minorities to, you know, train them to go to graduate school. And after I did well in that program, they sat me down for about a day and a half trying to get me to stay at Michigan. But I had given my word to James Oliver like 2 years before that I liked Delaware. And I did. Michigan was intimidating. You know, I went to Lincoln University. We had about 1,000 kids on campus when I was there. The building I stayed in during the summer at Michigan had more than 1,000 people in it. The one building. It was just too big. It was too much. They had buses running all over the campus. I was like, man, this ain't for me. Delaware was, you know, I felt an appropriate next step for me. So I went to graduate school at Delaware. I did a master's degree, and then I got another fellowship to study at the University of Maryland. And I completed all the doctoral coursework at the University of Maryland, started teaching. I actually taught at Maryland for a year, and then I took a job at Lincoln. I taught at Lincoln for about, I think, 5 years. And then my friends were really advancing in college basketball, and I used to help them out a lot, particularly Bruiser Flint and Todd Bozeman was at Cal, you know, and he was doing really well with Jason Kidd and all those guys. And I had some other friends in Philadelphia who were doing some things, and they would always tell me how much of a struggle it was to get the kids eligible, to get them to a point where they could, you know, accept the scholarships that they were offering. So I spent some time with some young people. Around that time, we're talking about Delonte West, Eddie Griffin, who ended up at Seton Hall for a year before he was, I think Ed was the 3rd or 4th pick in the NBA draft. He died tragically. Jameer Nelson, Mark Tyndale, Deontay Christmas at Temple. So I started working with all those guys, and, you know, I enjoyed it. And after a couple of years of just playing around with it, I just jumped out there and started my own tutoring firm. And we were fortunate enough to land some really big contracts under the George Bush's No Child Left Behind program. I mean, we were doing, at one point, we were doing 4,000 or 5,000 kids a year. We were we in New York City? We were approved. I don't think we ever actually offered the service in New York, but we were in Minnesota on the ground tutoring. We were in South Carolina tutoring.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Newark, New Jersey, Orange, New Jersey, Rahway, New Jersey. We did over 1,000 kids every year in Camden, New Jersey. We were in Philadelphia, Lancaster, Reading. I mean, it was a big operation. It was really good. We did that from 2005 until 2012. In 2012, President Obama yanked the funding stream. He just did away with it, and that really crushed that business. I mean, you went from doing several $1 million a year in business to absolutely no contracts. So since then, we kind of switched over, and I think you mentioned the scouting segment. I've always been a fan. I don't get on the court with the kids. I don't play with the kids or do anything of that nature. But what I've always done is really watch the kids play,
right,
and would make mental notes and would really always share information with my friends that were coaching in college. I to this day, I have a lot of friends who have come up through the ranks, and they're Division I coaches. So I just started a little scouting service, and that kind of took on a life of its own. It's done really well. We subscribers include like Marquette, Syracuse, UConn, Penn State, LaSalle, South Carolina, Maryland, and a bunch of, mid-major, low-major, D2 schools like Westchester here in Pennsylvania. A lot of JUCOs. So we've been helping kids, find a place commensurate with their abilities so that they can continue to access higher education beyond high school. That's kind of like the real mission of Black Cager Sports, what we really do. And sometimes that will require, writing, reporting, doing videos, making the kids known to people, granting them some exposure. In other instances, it may involve just writing a scouting report really detailed, so that I can really sell a kid to a particular program and get them some offers.
Now, let's go back to your college years at Lincoln U. It's a historically Black college, which is a little out of the way from Philly, like nothing around it. Talk about your college experience there.
Lincoln University, you're right. It's about 50 minutes outside of Philadelphia in Chester County. If you look at a map of the United States, there's a corner of Pennsylvania where Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania all kind of converge. That's exactly where Lincoln University is. It's literally a few minutes from Maryland, a few minutes from Delaware, but it's in Pennsylvania. It was really the best decision that I ever made. I wasn't a serious student in high school. I graduated in the bottom half of my class. I never did homework at home. I never really took it seriously. But once I got to Lincoln, I had professors that would just literally pull me to the side and say, yo, man, you really understand this stuff. Because, I would read the book and pass the test. That was easy. And they would say, man, why don't you read this book and give me an extra book or something like that? And I would read it and be like, yeah, this is what he's saying. He said, I think you could do a lot more. And I always could write, fairly well. So being at Lincoln, I had a few people. Professor Polychronio, he was a Greek national. And Dr. Nkomo, he was a member of the ANC who had been exiled, from South Africa. And I had a writing instructor. Her name was Professor Nigro. These were three people that really just kind of just said, man, basically stop fucking around, man. Take it serious.
Right.
You can do some things. And with that, just that little nudge, I started to take it seriously. I did really well in college, as far as the grades were concerned. I had a good time too, though, D. I ain't missed nothing. I ain't missed no parties. I ain't missed nothing. If I'd have gave up a little bit of partying, I probably could have been a 4.0 guy. But that trade-off wasn't worth it, man. I'll take 3, 4 3.5 and be at the party.
But so what year did you graduate from Lincoln?
I finished at Lincoln in 1988. Summer of 88, I spent in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That was a good time. They had really, right around that time, I mean, you had Marcus Liberty, Ramil Robinson. I had never really been around a high major football program, so it's the summertime. Those guys were on campus. And, you know, they're working out and they're walking around. I used to see guys, I had never seen backs that wide, that big. These human beings were unlike anything I had ever seen. Lincoln did not have a football team when I was there. So I had never experienced that. That was really different and unique. So yeah, I spent that summer. Then from 88 to 90, I was at the University of Delaware. And then I was at Maryland. I took a year or two off, got back in. I went to Maryland from 93 to 96.
So you graduated from Maryland in 96?
Yes.
Nice. So like basically after so you said Delaware from 88 to 91. So those other 2 degrees after Lincoln were like masters, basically.
Yes.
Okay. What was your degrees in from Delaware and Maryland?
Delaware was international relations, and Maryland was comparative politics. You know, I that's one of the things, you know, as a research approach, you know, comparing things, you know, and that's why I just take those same skills and I apply them to basketball. You know, every time I do a scouting report, I try to think of who this kid reminds me of, you know, and you write it like that, you know, he does this, he does that. And the comparative approach, I think, is really, really something that could really inform a lot of people. We don't tend to think of it in our community at young ages, you know, it's like writing in order to really explain things. Kids like to describe things or tell a story, but we don't do a lot of explaining.
Right.
That's why I like your stuff, and I like a lot of the other stuff that people are generating, like Raw Sports. You know, what he does is just absolutely fantastic because it comes from, you know, the heart. You know, it comes from, you're not doing this, you don't have an editor. You know, you get to put out what you really want to put out.
Exactly.
So the advent of social media, I think, has just been tremendous for guys like yourself and me and Mike Starling and everybody else that's kind of just jumped out here and just said, you know what, I can put out some stuff. And if it's quality, you know, people find it, man. People find you. And
exactly.
you develop a loyal following.
Indeed. So when did Black Cager Sports start?
2013.
Okay.
I'll tell you the truth. I had actually written a piece and I submitted it to one of the, I guess, mainstream websites. And the guy said, oh man, it's well written. I really like it, but I can't run it. So I'm like, well, why? He said, you know, we do straight journalism here, Del, and you're more of an advocate, and we don't really do advocacy. And I couldn't be mad at him, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, so I reread my stuff, and I was like, he's right. I was advocating a particular position, as I tend to do in all the stuff I write. You know, you take a position and you argue for it. But I said, God damn it, it's better than all the stuff that this guy is running. So wow. You know what? I went on WordPress, bought me a theme, and said, you know what? Let's go. Black Cajun Press is off and running. I think I've published well over 400 or 500 pieces in that time, you know, just doing it. If I can put out 5 or 6 pieces a month, I can definitely generate 20 to 30,000 monthly readers, you know, pretty easily. People find it. I just distribute it straight through Twitter and Facebook, and people find it from there.
So how is it, you know, making like connections with college coaches and not just the high major schools, but also like the black colleges, the Division IIs, the Division IIIs, the JUCOs, the NAIAs. Like how easy is it for you to connect with these other coaches?
Well, I have really good relationships with a lot of coaches. So, college coaches are really big on trust. As long as they trust you, so they know you, then you're not going to have them out there, answering questions or having to respond to something unexpected. They'll pretty much grant you any access. It's to the point now. I'll get 2 or 3 calls a day, man, from a JUCO in Utah or Iowa. I heard you're the man in Philadelphia I need to talk to. What do you think about this kid? I want to subscribe to your service. I mean, this happens all the time. So it's really, I don't even reach out anymore. I just don't. I have some guys who have benefited, found some kids through using Black Cajun Press, and they just share it with other people. Somebody might say, look, I'm trying to get into Philadelphia, and my name will just get mentioned along with maybe a guy like Sam Rhines, Lonnie Lowry, Kamal Yard. I know who they call when they're trying to get into Philadelphia. And just like me, those guys will just do whatever. For kids that are in their programs, not in their programs, they'll give honest assessments and try to help these kids find a landing spot.
So, talk about, all the talent in the state of Pennsylvania, in Philly.
A lot of it's rolling out, Dave.
Yeah, like everything, like New York, we have upstate New York, we have Westchester County, Long Island, and of course New York City. You guys out there in PA, you have most of the talent is in Philly, but then you have other parts, and then you have pretty much public.
You gotta be a little careful with that, though, Dave. Because think about some of the top guys. Now they play high school ball in Philly, no doubt. But you come down enough so that you'll recognize all of these names, right? Seth Lundy, right? Freshman starter at Penn State, Big Ten starter on a really a top 25 team, right? He's from Paulsboro, New Jersey. Isaiah Wong. Freshman starter at Miami, right? Really good rookie ACC season, right? He's from New Brunswick, New Jersey, I believe, Central Jersey somewhere, right? Donta Scott, freshman starter at Maryland. He's from Norristown, Pennsylvania. So all these kids play in Philadelphia,
but they don't live there, yeah.
They're not from Philadelphia. Even Fats Russell, he's tearing it up in the A-10, probably preseason pick, one of the top picks for A-10 Player of the Year next year, right? His family lives in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, but he went to Emotep Charter High School. So you find this over and over and over again. A lot of the kids that are really well recognized and touted as being, some of the top kids in Philly, they're not from Philly. Chris Ings at Ryder is from Delaware County. This year, I think we got some real Philly kids. Rasul Diggins is a Philly kid. Jalen Stinson is a Philly kid. Hasir Miller is a Philly kid. Jalen Duren, people always associate him with Philadelphia, number 2 in his class, just went down to Montverde. He's from Delaware, man. He's not a Philly kid.
Right.
So this is over and over again. So you got to be a little tricky. And right now, with who left? Justice left, Jalen left, and Chance Westry left. Chance is from Harrisburg. Justice and Jalen played in the Philadelphia Catholic League, but they all left with 2 years of eligibility still on the clock. So now I guess they'll be counted as California kid for Chance and Florida kids for the other 2.
Right.
Now, in some ways, we benefit from this, right? Because, people think of Cam Reddish as a Philly kid, right? But
which he's not.
He's not. He never went to school in Philly. He went to school in Haverford, and he lived in Norristown. Then he graduated from Westtown, which is in Westchester. Now pure Philly kids would be like Sam Sessoms. Another kid that's really good this year, kid from out in the suburbs of Reading, PA, Stevie Mitchell, plays for Philly Pride. that kind of gives him some Philly credibility, playing for Philly Pride. But he's a Reading kid. I mean, he's from Berks County. Like, he's been out there for years and years and years. Hasn't been anywhere else as far as schooling is concerned. I think when it comes to the state of Pennsylvania, we've had some really, really good kids come out of the Philadelphia Catholic League. Probably a fewer number of really good kids coming out of the public league, but there are some, the MOTEP teams of the last 7 or 8 years have been really good, produced a lot of Division I level players. Constitution, Rob Moore, he had Savon Goodman, played at Arizona State, started out at UNLV. He had DeQuan Walker, played at UCF. Rob's had a couple of others. You got Sankofa, has the kid Darius Ward. He should be at LaSalle next year, as a freshman. But for the most part, you go Philadelphia Catholic League, Philadelphia Public League, and then you got the suburban districts like Big Eric Dixon and the left-handed kid. Oh, man, his dad was going to kill me. The kid that played with Eric at Abington. Lucas Monroe.
Okay.
Freshman, just finished his freshman year at Penn. So those guys were at Abington for 2 years. And then before that, they had Robbie Heath on the same team. Robbie Heath averaged like 27 points a game as a freshman for Westchester last year, Division II. Transferred, he's going to Pepperdine. So on that one team, you got Eric Dixon, Lucas Monroe, and Robbie Heath on one Abington High School team.
That's amazing.
Yes, and this is the Philadelphia suburbs,
Mm-hmm.
That kid, Cam Johnson played at Pitt and transferred to UNC.
Yeah,
His little brother was like the best player in Pennsylvania this year, but the PIAA did some goofy stuff, went back, said he repeated the 6th grade or something like that and called him on it. The kid had to leave for his senior year. He had to go play out of state somewhere. He's
in Arizona, Hillcrest.
Yeah. That makes no – I hate what the PIAA does on those eligibility rulings, man. I've seen them do some really weird things, and I don't know who their real constituency is. Like, what are you trying to accomplish by doing this stuff? But they do it over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, like, one of the points that you're alluding to, right? Like, there are some kids that play in Philly that aren't from there. It's like up here in New York, we have R.J. Davis and A.J. Griffin. They're two of the best players in the Catholic League, but everybody seems to associate them with New York City. But, the only connection that the school that Stepanak has with them is the fact that they play New York City schools. Now, R.J. is from Elmsford, New York, and AJ is from Ossining. You know what I'm saying?
These are real suburbs, right?
Right, exactly. Right, that's not the city. And the school is up in White Plains, not White Plains Road, everybody. White Plains, New York. You know what I'm saying? So them and Iona Prep, see, when Rice closed, that's when schools like Cardinal Hayes moved up, Stepanak moved up, and Iona Prep, which is also in New Rochelle. So those two schools are in Westchester. But, they'll still, some of the kids from the city go there. But at the end of the day, those are still suburban schools. It's just that the only connection that they have is the fact that they play against the city schools. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah. And then to your other point, you mentioned something about the rulings. So out here in New York, we have Lehigh. Like, their kids can play from middle school on up to high school, but they still get to play in the state playoffs. Them and Mount Vernon.
So you can end up playing 5 or 6 years of varsity basketball in New York.
At Lehigh, yeah. And I think at Westchester County. So I guess they're allowed to, as long as it's in New York City, you can't do that. But outside of the city, there are schools that have them playing. I know Mount Vernon for a time, they did that when they were, they had a couple guys playing from middle school, like 5 or 6 years. So they were allowed to do that. But in New York City, you can't.
Well, from where I sit, and I'm a little older than you now, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
So I can remember New York City high school basketball back when it was, Pearl Washington, Rod Strickland, Chris Mullin, and those guys, right? Then it seemed like after that era, what New York went through is what Philadelphia is starting to go through now.
Right.
The programs started coming in. And in your case, it wasn't even really that they were so much national. They were just in North Jersey, St. Anthony's and Rutgers Prep and all of them started coming over there, plucking out really, and the New England prep schools started.
Yeah, that was that mainly. That was it mainly. Like, I feel like 2008 when Kemba Walker and Truck Bryan's class, that was probably like the last class that really stayed in New York. After that, that's when more kids started leaving New York City to go to prep school.
What grade did they start identifying those kids? 9th, 10th, 11th?
It's tough to say. Like, I would say it was because of the whole AAU thing. I think that was the main reason for them, for a lot of the kids leaving New York. Through it became, situations may not have been good, or they needed, more looks. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like where we're at,
But New York is the media capital of the world. How could you not get sufficient looks in New York City? How does that make sense?
That's a great question. And it's like, well, like what I was saying about New York, Stepanak and White Plains before. So in New York City now, we're really not getting a lot of newspaper coverage at all.
Same in Philly. They cut it. I mean, do they still have those guys on the payroll?
No. Like, I know that the Daily News they don't really do high school anymore. They got rid of all the people that did high school. The Post got rid of high school. The New York Times doesn't, like, for the New York Times, and because it's a national newspaper, you have to do something spectacular to be in the New York Times. But at one point, they were doing high school sports too. Newsday, they only do Long Island, but for years they covered New York City too. But and then Westchester, like I was telling you before about Iona Prep and Stepanak, they'll only come to, like, let's say if there was, like, playoff games at Fordham or Mount St. Michael or St. Ray's, they're only coming to see Iona Prep and Stepanak for those games. Once those two schools are done playing, they're out of there, because they're not coming to see, a school from Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan. You know what I'm saying? They only come to see those two schools.
So what's the Bible up there now? For all these guys, is it Dave's Joint? Are there other, startup, web-based sources that have become like the go-to spot? If I'm a star, if I'm Taj Childs and I want to read about what I did last night, where do I go to find it?
Well, there's normally myself, Jaquan Bowden, Hoops Dreams NYC, Calvin Griffin, All Things Hoops. But I mean, as far
how
as
many guys do they have out there? Like, is it just them, or do they have other guys writing for them?
No, it's just them. Like, it's just
so games aren't getting covered.
Well, we do our best to cover certain things. You know what I'm saying? But as far as papers, the city kids are concerned, everything is more about now. I would say it would be more about the mixtapes, if you will. And I kind of see it in Philly too. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot.
J-Do is the man down here.
Right. Oh, yeah. J-Do, Jamie, 8i. You know what I'm saying?
Jamie kind of moved on,
right, because he's doing much bigger things now.
Yeah.
But he still comes to the
he pops up.
The Philly Catholic League games. But that's basically what it's about now. It's less about the editorial now, and now more about the cameras, because we're in a digital age, and a lot of people don't really read as much as they used to. So that's kind of the kids' way of getting exposure. But for us, we're kind of like the throwback to that, you know, because I know the college coaches I don't think they really care too much about the mixtapes. Like the
Nah,
mixtapes
they
are
don't.
good,
They would
but
want a game tape and a nice write-up would suffice.
exactly. So they kind of value us maybe a little more than they would, you know, the cameras. Because at the end of the day, these mixtape guys will manipulate to where they're only going to make the players look good, but they're not going to show the players' weaknesses, which really hurts them at the end of the day.
You could actually be at a game and then watch the highlight and be like, damn, he ain't play that good, but he looked good on that video.
Yeah, man.
That's real rap.
That's unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. But
you know, print journalism is just a dying industry, man.
Yeah.
They can't figure out a way to monetize it. You know, once something's on the internet, people go to screenshot it, share it. You know, it's no way. A newspaper, you know, you had to buy it and hold it. You know, you weren't going to copy the newspaper, but you know, a web link. You know,
right.
People going to share it, and they just can't figure it out, man.
Now,
they can't get that.
You know what's funny? Like I'll go to the corner store right now, and this was even before COVID-19 hit. Like the papers are it's like less and less pages now.
Smaller. Yes.
Yeah, the pages are small. Like I remember when I was younger, maybe 8th grade, I used to go to school in the morning. I used to see like copies of the Daily News on the floor, and I would read it. It would be at least 100 pages. Now it's probably like maybe 60 or 70.
It's a struggle, and the guys I really respect, like Dick Weiss, you know,
right?
He's not in the game with a newspaper anymore. He writes, you know, for Blue Star
independently,
Media.
right?
Yes. So I don't know what to tell young people. They tell me they want to be a sports writer. I'm like, boy, I don't know. There's a couple. I just don't know where you're going to be in 10, 20 years, young fella.
The only way to join would be you could do slam, but like the only way to really make it pop is if you're doing stuff, maybe build your own brand, but try to make yourself a little bit more legitimate. I think that would be the only way to go at this point. But then the other issue is you go to try to do certain national events and they won't take you. And that makes it even harder. Because it's like, you may have really good
I rarely run into that. You still running into that?
Yeah.
You got a nice track record, Dave.
That's the problem, though. Like, Jordan Brand Classic, I was never able to cover that. What other event have I?
When you send your request, right, do you attach links to your work?
I never have, but
you have to.
Even then,
I think they would let you in, Dave. You got a long. I mean, I really don't run into that because I will. You know, I got an interview with Mark Turgeon. I got an interview with Pat Chambers. I got an interview with Frank Martin. Come on, man, what the fuck you talking about, dog? I do this. Let me in, and they see it. You never have. So I would get those kind of interviews. You know, if you can get Mike Anderson, you know,
if you can get wonderful, yeah, you know,
if you can get Pikel, right? Now, when you send out your request and say, hey, this is the kind of stuff I do, and you attach those links, you'll get in everywhere, man. Absolutely. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that. You know, that would be great because it's like a lot of these events, you know, you have people that for one reason or another, they'll gravitate towards maybe the slams or the Bleacher Reports. You know, that's another, right. So they're going to gravitate towards these, and then, you know, the overtime. They're going to gravitate towards more of the cameras now, but in college basketball is completely more different. You know, not like college basketball is more editorial.
Now your stuff is good, man. You just gotta get a better way of requesting it, man. You shouldn't be a problem. And you know, if you have a real good relationship with, say, Manhattan or St. Francis, New York, or one of those, you should get that that SID or one of those assistant coaches to just co-sign. You know, it's ways. I mean,
shout out to St. Francis is actually my alma mater, so I have a great relationship with them, and I also have a great relationship with Manhattan. Yeah, of course. Shout outs to Kevin Ross at Manhattan College. You know, and then all the good folks at St. Francis. But yeah, you know, I have a good relationship with most of the SIDs I cover
Well,
with.
come on down to Philly, man. I'll get you in wherever you want to go, man.
My God.
Nova, Temple, LaSalle, St. Joe's, Drexel, Penn, Rider, Delaware, Del State. Don't matter. I get you. And they all give out night. They got pizzas and sandwiches and sodas. You know, they feed you, man.
Yeah, I've actually been to Temple before and Nova. I love Nova. The best thing about Nova is when they play at Wells Fargo. That's the beautiful part.
Yeah, that's big time. I like the real college environments, though. I like DuPont, Fieldhouse, Leocoris, that Wells Fargo, all that smoke machines and all that loud music.
I love it. I love Wells Fargo. Like, you see how they added the fire machine, right?
I don't need all that, man. That's
that.
too much,
I
man.
love that.
That's why I don't go.
That.
I might go to one Sixers game every 2 or 3 years.
I love that. That's a good little show. But yeah, anyway, so like you mentioned earlier, Chance transferred to Sierra Canyon. Justice transferred to
Montverde.
Jalen Duren transfers to Montverde. Like, how much does that really hurt, you know, the landscape in Philadelphia and also in the state of Pennsylvania?
I don't, you know, I just selfishly, I would like to see those guys play. There are a lot of people down here who are really kind of upset about that particular aspect of it. They're saying it's a real blow to local high school basketball. I'm not really of that opinion, though. I think that these kind of decisions, a kid has to sit down with his mother, with his father, with whoever else he really trusts. It could be the AAU guy, the high school guy, whoever else. You know, it's always a couple of people that the family really trusts. And they sit down at the kitchen table or the living room, and they come up with a decision that's best for that kid. That kid can't be concerned about, you know, how it impacts the PIAA or Philadelphia Catholic League or the Philadelphia area. That makes absolutely no sense. If it doesn't work out, the Catholic League, the area, the region ain't got nothing for that kid. It's on that family. They need to do what's best for that kid. Would it be a blow? I guess Chance, I'm not sure what classification Trinity was, but Chance is so good, he probably could have, you know, taken Trinity on a deep, deep run into the States. He took them to the state championship game as a freshman. That's when I first saw him in the state championship game. I was there to watch Wood play. And I'm watching this game before the Wood game, and this skinny kid is just like getting all these buckets. Then they tell me he's got 40-something points. I'm like, who is this kid? I didn't know who he was or anything. That's the night I met Chance, and I've kind of stayed in touch with him since then. So I think he probably, you know, just because he's that good, could have elevated that team. Roman, though, I mean, you know, I went through this last year locally down here. I didn't think Roman would win the Catholic League championship, and they didn't. I picked Roman to lose a lot of games, and they did. They had 3 supremely talented players. You know, you had Lingrier, you had Justice, you had Jalen. But what they didn't have was that team chemistry. You know, it's like a boat. Everybody has to row in one direction, and you have to have one goal, which is to win games. If you got one guy worrying about, you know, offers, and another guy worrying about rankings, and another guy worrying about points, and you guys aren't focused on the task at hand, which is to win this basketball game right in front of us, you're going to get tripped up a lot. So if they had Justice and Jalen this year, they would have been one of the favorites, but they wouldn't have been my favorite to win the Philadelphia Catholic League. I would have went with Wood or maybe Newman again, you know, just because of that, the way that Carl and John have been very careful in putting their rosters together. They got kids that really buy into, you know, the team concept and trying to have goals. Now, that's not to say you can't get it done with a star, because over in the public league, you got Nasir Nassim Poplar, who's a super duper duper star. But his teammates allow him to do that. There's no animosity. You know, you're in the gym watching MCS play. Everybody in the gym, the scorekeeper, the janitor, everybody in the building knows who's going to get the ball and take the shot. The opponents know, the kids know, everybody knows. Poplar still gets it, still makes it, still takes it. He's a star. He's a true star down here in Philadelphia. So you can do it that way. But if he had teammates that were a little bit envious or resentful of his status, it wouldn't work. Right. So Roman just, with those guys that they had, they just weren't able to figure that part of it out. Because there's no way with 3 top 100 guys on a high school team, you lose 10 games. That makes no sense.
And I also felt that Roman was a really good squad because they also had Xavier Brown. But like you said, like there was some issues with chemistry. And, I kind of saw it in 2 of the games that they played. I saw that when they played Imhotep around the Christmas holiday, and then again against Newman in the the championship game at the Palestra. So yeah, but I mean, I think they would have been good moving forward. But again, like a lot of people said, it is a blow. But I'm sure that Matt Griffin and Roman will come. They'll come back up. They'll always have players. They'll get back to where they need to be.
They'll be competitive. Losing those 2 players though, without knowing who they're adding. I'm hearing that the kid Khalil Farmer is going over there. He's a really good player. He's a Division I prospect, mid-major level player. I'm sure he can score. He can get buckets. They still have Xavier, as you pointed out. But you take a kid like Xavier. Xavier is very crafty. He's very intelligent. He's very smart. He knows how to play basketball. So what he really understood and was able to take advantage of last year was just the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over. He's a very safe ball handler. He was very good at making entry-level passes, skip passes. He understood floor spacing. And he accepted the fact that he was the 4th or the 5th option. It wasn't a big deal. He might get 6 shot attempts a game. He's knocking down 4 of them. And if you leave him open and his feet are set, that 3 is going in. That's a perfect setup for a talented, smart freshman player. With those guys leaving, he's not the 4th or 5th option now. He's going to be 1 or 2. And teams are going to be geared up. Stinson and Diggins are going to be locked in on Xavier. There's no justice there anymore. So Xavier is now going to get a lot of attention. He's going to have to make a tremendous leap and be able to deal with, team scouting and devising game plans really designed to take him out of the game. For Roman to even have a chance, he's got to jump up and be like a first-team all-league level player. And he's so small, I think he grew a little bit. I saw a recent picture. He's about tall as his father. He might be taller than you right now, Justin. And he's a good player. Is he good enough to carry Roman to where you would expect to see them at the Palestra again this year? That remains to be seen.
Yeah. So now we talked about the Catholic. It seems like the charter schools are really holding their own out in Philly. Like you mentioned, Imhotep and Sankofa. How do they differ from most of the regular public school teams?
Well, the public schools, unfortunately, over the past 2 decades or so, have really developed poor reputations in terms of the academic performance of the schools, as well as the social setting. Whether or not it's fair at this particular time, I don't think so. I think they do a much better job of controlling the social environment right now. But as you know, reputations linger and perceptions are difficult to change. So kids that in the past would have went to Overbrook High School, West Philly High School, South Philly High School, Ben Franklin High School. The best players from these neighborhoods are now the kids that are targeted by MCS, by Sankofa, by Constitution. And this has been the case. I mean, if you look at the last 15 years, I mean, Imhotep has had a run that's on par with, you know, some of the all-time great runs in Pennsylvania state history, much less just the Philadelphia Public Catholic League. I think that the neighborhood high schools are doing a much better job of, you know, attracting kids, because we do have open enrollment. It's not like you stuck in a neighborhood. You know, you can go to any high school in Philadelphia you want to. You don't have to go to your neighborhood high school. You can go to another neighborhood public school. I think that some schools have just done a much better job of hiring the right coaches, because, you know, high school basketball right now is a job. And if you don't take the recruiting and the scouting aspect of it very seriously, it's going to be hard to compete at the highest levels. So you had a school like Martin Luther King, you know, Sean Colson fits that description. He's very serious. He's going to go out. He's going to find guys. He's going to identify guys. He's kind of developed a reputation as a place where kids can go if it doesn't work out in Catholic school or at one public school. You can go to King, and Sean's going to get you to play at a high level, and you can compete. South Philly High, although they didn't make a deep run, they had a group of kids, really D3, D2 kids that stayed together. So they were all juniors and seniors last year, and they were pretty competitive. That's one way of getting it done. Overbrook's kind of done the same thing. They got the kids in their neighborhood to just kind of stick together. They were victims of some of those horrendous PIAA rulings we were talking about earlier. One of their best players lost his senior year, and he was a fourth-year kid. It's not like he was a fifth-year guy, and the PIAA just took his whole season away from him in a horrible ruling, man. And he had to go play prep school ball as a senior, so he missed out. That set Overbrook back a little bit. That was 2 years ago. Overbrook's done a good job in recent years. So, I mean, overall, I don't expect it to really change, because the advantages that the charters have is just a lot of flexibility. You know, if you're a charter school and you're the coach and your boss trusts you and gives you the keys to the gym, you can do whatever you want. You know, in a regular public school, it's a little different. You know, you got to run things by, you know, the principal, and the principal has to follow district guidelines of what can and cannot happen in your gym. So a place like Imhotep has really become almost the community center for Philadelphia. I mean, they have so many events there because Andre is just a part of the community, and he likes having the people come up to Imhotep. That's a heck of an advantage. Those kids are always able to access that gym to get up shots, run around, do some skills, do some drills, and Andre's assistants are always available and willing to work with him. I don't know of public schools that give the coaches that kind of leeway, and coaches staffs that have that kind of commitment.
So talk about your podcast that you also have.
Well, I try to do it, but I'm not consistent, Dave. You know, sometimes I just get motivated. So when we first had the pandemic and everybody was stuck at home, I said, well, shoot, if everybody's home, we can really do some things, right? So I lined up. I mean, I hit them hard for about 2 weeks running. I might have had 12 or 14 shows over 2 weeks. But we had guys like Pat Chambers, Mark Turgeon, Frank Martin, South Carolina, Ashley Howard from LaSalle, Kamani Young from up at UConn, Dwayne Killings. I had the two top assistants at Miami, Fisher and Caputo, came on. And all I try to do is just give guys an opportunity to communicate with me and introduce themselves to the larger Philadelphia basketball audience. I try to give them a platform whereby they can talk about what their program has to offer the kids and what the kids can expect when they come onto their programs. Now, in between all of that, I'll sneak in some slick questions about, race and college basketball, the issue of hiring black coaches and, why should black kids attend your institution? We'll always get a little bit of that in there because I feel like if you, me, guys like us, if we don't ask those questions, they'll go unaddressed. So what we're going to see over the next few months, Dave, is guys in the mainstream media scrambling, trying to find a way to talk about these issues now because they're sexy. The kids are putting it out there now, man. I'm not playing if y'all don't take that flag down. If my coach keeps saying this dumb stuff, I'm transferring. So we got a group of kids, and I don't think America is really ready for what's coming. This year, when they stick these microphones in these kids' faces, they're going to get some responses that they really are not anticipating. And kids are going to say some things that in previous years they might have got suspended, reprimanded, They're going to have to let that stuff go now because we all see how serious the issue of, the racial imbalance is, the police brutality is. You can't punish a kid for having an opinion on that stuff anymore.
Right. But I feel like kind of like the schools censor the coaches a lot nowadays.
Oh, they have to. Because if they don't, what's going to happen is you're going to lose your players. And think about it. Next year, Dave, by this time next summer, you won't even have to sit out if you transfer. You won't even have to give a reason. You don't have to snitch on nobody. You can just transfer and play. So if your coach wants to come in and call kids, niggers or say something in the public that's, the kid don't even have to get mad at you, man. He can get on his phone right after practice and enter the portal.
Yeah.
That's it. And
right.
University presidents and athletic directors truly value these kids. You saw how quickly that this kid ran for 2,000 yards. He had 20-something touchdowns at Oklahoma State. He said, you know what? My coach is tripping. I ain't doing nothing unless within 24 hours.
But there's one reason for that, Del.
Yes.
They're generating a lot of money for those schools.
But they've been generating the money. They're just starting to understand that they can leverage their beliefs and opinions.
And those schools will do anything they can to keep those players because they don't want to lose that cash cow. They don't want to lose that revenue.
And, if 2 or 3 of your best kids leave, man, the kids at high school not going to come. They see it. The kids at Texas came out and said, if you guys keep forcing us to sing this racist fight song, we're not going to participate in any donor-related activities, and we're not going to recruit any other kids to come here. Now, we're going to go to practice, and we're going to play in the games. So don't mess with our scholarship. We don't want that kind of problem. But we ain't doing nothing extra. I'm waiting to see what Texas does about the fight song. And the kid at Mississippi State came out and said, if they don't change the state flag, he's not running that football for them. So I'm waiting to see what Mississippi State does in response to this kid's demands. So we're going to see, man. This is going to be a really interesting year, Mike, Dave.
So one of my questions that I love to ask, if you could go back in the time machine to 1988, what would you tell Del at 21 and 22 as he's going for his fellowship?
Oh, that this thing called the internet is coming, and it's real. You've taken advantage of it. I've taken advantage of it. I think we should have been on it in 90, 91, 92 when it first hit. People have made fortunes that are in excess of, DuPont and GM and ExxonMobil. I mean, these boys on the internet have truly transformed the economy, the way people think about business, conduct business. What Amazon is doing right now, I mean, he's literally shutting down, the corner bike shop, the corner sneaker store, the camera shop, all of them. Man, the internet is shutting that stuff down. Amazon will have that stuff at your house tomorrow, man. It's a whole new economy. And in 1988, There was no way I could have ever foreseen that brick and mortar businesses, stores, retail outlets would be, really on the way out come 2020.
Well said. Final question. What's next for Delgreco Wilson and Black Cager Press?
Well, I think a big part of the problem we're now facing, I think, is the extent to which young people are miseducated. The great Carter G. Woodson wrote his seminal text, I think in 1933, arguing that, we're just miseducating people. And now we're paying for it because we have a group of people who are in positions of power who really will try to put forth arguments that, celebrating Klansmen and Confederate generals who fought to, keep me, you, our people in slavery, working for them for free, for our life, at the threat of death. If you ran away, they would kill you. That celebrating these people should not be offensive to us, So I think that one of the things I need to do is to help young people, even younger than yourself, 15, 16, 18, 20, 21, help them understand the ideological, the strategic ideas that have come out of our community before these guys came around. Because a lot of times you turn on the TV and you see the young men and they're so angry and they're so hostile, they're in cops' faces, but they just don't have a plan. They just don't know. So I think if I can explain to you, son, Nat Turner faced these same issues. Frederick Douglass faced these same issues. And this is the way he tried to address it. And Du Bois dealt with it this way, and Garvey dealt with it that way. And A. Philip Randolph, before the March on Washington, A. Philip Randolph was talking about doing a March on Washington, and we had Shirley Chisholm, and she said, you know what, I can be president. It's a black woman in 1972, son. Obama didn't start this thing. So I have a pet project that I had been working on for a while, but recent events have kind of motivated me to step up and get it done. It's in the final stages. I should be able to have it out there in July. And like I said, I'm going to lean on my friends in basketball. These coaches, they have an obligation, I think, to buy it and share it with their players, buy it and share it with the kids that are in the high schools they graduated from. I need each of them to buy a few hundred copies of it, get this information out. So that's what's next up for Black Cager Press in the short term.
Del, thank you for coming on to share your story and your testimony, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck with Black Cager Press and Wilson and Woods moving forward.
I've always got love for Dave's joint, man. I'm always looking forward to seeing you, Dave. And Dave, I'm going to get myself a camera in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to start learning how to take some good pictures because this likeness and image thing is real, Dave.
Yeah, it is.
It's so much changing so fast. And, we tend to pick up on it by the time it's too late, and everybody's already staked out a position and, you got to go hand in hat asking for some access. So I'm going to start collecting me some likenesses and images real soon, man.
Indeed. So everybody, this is episode 40 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. If you're from the Philadelphia area, Darby Township area, Delaware area, and South Jersey area, please check out this episode on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. Everybody in New York, this is phase 2 right now. If you need to go get a haircut, go ahead. If you need to go get your hair done, go ahead. If you need to go to the nail salon, go ahead. If you have to go to the park, let some steam off or go exercise, go ahead. But just be careful. Have your hand sanitizer on deck and wear your mask. COVID-19 is still out there, but also live your lives and be safe. God bless. Peace.